Hello in-game fans! Final Fantasy Tactics is one of the most impressive turn-based tactics titles for good reason, due to the sheer variety of character classes, intriguing campaign and just great turn-based tactics strategizing. So here's a look at some of the best indie games that followed in those footsteps. I did review my previous list and shuffled some things around, since some of these were not as like FFT as I would like, with a surprise or two that's worth a look. Let's begin with The Last Spell, a fantastic tactics game that's structurally different from what you would expect, being a roguelite defense title, but is one of the best modern games. The developers describe this as FFT meets Diablo meets Dynasty Warriors, and I'm adding a touch of They Are Billions as well, being a pixel art tactics title that just throws absolute swarms of enemies at you. Super impressive in early access so far, and only looks to get better with time. A title that wears its inspiration on its sleeve is Hellenica, where keen-eyed viewers will see a famous scene set in ancient Greece with a steampunk twist. You play as the chosen warrior of Artemis, goddess of the hunt, with the ability to transform into a bear, with a number of allies by your side. One of the key features that the developer notes is that positioning matters. We are able to push enemies off cliffs, throw allies to safety and more, giving it somewhat of a different feel. There is replayability as well, with multiple branching story paths, making this a title of interest. A game with one of the most interesting looks is Tactics v Obsidian Brigade, one that stars a party of multiple character classes adventuring and fighting their way through a high fantasy world. It is paying tribute to console tactical RPGs from the 90s, so I'm sure that you'll be familiar with the games that the developer is referring to, but the tactics portion of this is pretty good. 14 classes, 50 skills, 140 powers, 50 handcrafted levels, and 80 scripted scenes and battles makes this have a ton of content, where based on the number of reviews, this game is tremendously underrated, so go pick up this hidden gem if you have not.
Before Arthur's golden age, our realm was lost in decadence, shattered, distraught. We were a broken Britannia.
A tactics title with unique characters is Sword Legacy Omen, drawing upon Arthurian legend, where you play as the Knight Uther, having to gather allies, claim Excalibur, and to defeat the Duke of Wessex.
No one expected our great king's path of ascension to be paved by so much sorrow and destruction. Such a catastrophe would shape the fortunes of all. The kingdoms, once united, were torn apart.
I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the look as compared to some of the games further down on this list, but it's good enough, and the game does have some interesting tactics gameplay.
Indeed, we were a broken Britannia. In a time before Arthur, we needed a symbol to inspire change. We needed an omen.
I love the look and art of Regalia of Men and Monarchs, coming to us from Polish developer Pixelated Milk, who you might know from the Darkest Dungeon like Warsaw.
Keep up the momentum, guys!
You play as the heir to the throne who inherits a wondrous kingdom when your father passes away, but surprise surprise, the kingdom is drowning in debt, and it is up to you to pay it off and to restore it to its former glory. On top of good and varied tactics combat, since you do have more than 20 plus characters to befriend and recruit, there's a whole management system in this as you build up your castle and pay off your debts. Think of it as Recettear and Items Shop's Tale crossed with a tactics RPG, and you get the idea. One of the more recent entries which may be not so indie is Mercenaries Blaze Dawn of the Twin Dragons, one that absolutely got me with the pixel art alone and then hits you with all the expected elements, where factors such as terrain, elevation, distance, and even which direction you're facing are all things that need to be taken into consideration. Character job classes can also evolve and have branching paths, meaning that it perhaps comes the closest to FFT in terms of modern games. Your characters do also have a limit break style special ability called a Blaze Exceed, which can change the tide of battle. Story-wise, it's set in your classic war-torn kingdom, where you're initially not playing as the good guys, being hired mercenaries sent to hunt down and round up refugees from the war, where of course, you need to play in order to see where the story goes. Still, absolutely fantastic look with the ability to rotate the isometric map as well, which may hide secrets, making this a title of interest. First things first, if you're new to this channel, please do not write off Horizon's Gate based solely on the look, since indie developer Red Codex has been making tactics games like this dating back to at least 2015, and is truly one of the hidden gems of the community. This is their latest title, a refinement and polished combination of their two other titles, Voidspire Tactics and Elvora Tactics, where it is indeed one of the most impressive tactics RPGs. It's an open-world adventure where you can play as an explorer, trader, or privateer, exploring the world and going on adventures or to follow the main story beat. There are 8 playable races with 36 classes to choose from, where I like that it's a non-traditional fantasy world without elves, orcs, or goblins, which makes it unique. Impressive strategy elements as well, earning a well-deserved spot on the list. Despite some of the rather risque character designs, if you told me that anime French Revolution tactics game would be any good, I would have had my doubts, but Banner of the Maid has proven me wrong. It's set in an alternate history retelling of the French Revolution, set in a period of warring houses and political intrigue, where you play as Pauline Bonaparte, sister to Napoleon, and have to fight and carve out your own path amidst the chaos. While the attack animation does zoom into something more resembling Advance Wars, the grid-based tactics combat does have all your expected factors such as terrain type, positioning, and elevation to consider. You know me, I'm a sucker for pixel art, so of course, this gets a great spot on the list. Surprise! My previous number 1 title has been displaced, but Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark is still very good and totally worth a play. It's about as classic as an isometric tactics RPG can get, where you play as an arbiter of an order meant to keep the peace, but discovers a corruption within the organization amid the threat of a great and powerful evil. It has a very extensive job class system, which is always fun to experiment with, and since we last talked about this, the developer did release the Missions and Monsters DLC, which adds even more monsters, classes, locations, and more, making it a cannot miss for fans of the genre. And of course, our new number 1 title is Fey Tactics, another pixel art entry that does have more than a little in common with FFT. It comes to us from developer Endless Fluff Games, makers of the excellent Metroidvania, Velda's Story Abyssal City, where I'm glad to report that they have very successfully made the transition to a tactics title. Interestingly, rather than having multiple characters of different classes, we are summoning Fey creatures, Pokemon style, with an impressive variety in the number of different creatures. While the main story starts off fairly mundane, the tactics portion is what intrigues me the most, even adding an elemental system into this, making it one of the best tactics games in recent memory, taking the number 1 spot.
He leaves us no recourse! Swords!
Oh, do you think we were done? I just have one special shoutout this time around with Project Triangle Strategy, the next tactics title from Square Enix, which does look even more like FFT, where I love the comeback of pixel art from bigger studios, even if it is in the modern style of something like Octopath Traveler, which makes this a bigger game of interest for sure. For more tactics titles, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.